Welcome to Stoic Mindset Daily. In today's video, I want to share a story that changed me in ways I never thought possible. What happened that quiet afternoon shook me to my core. I thought I had life all figured out. The boxes checked, the rules followed, the expectations met. But one unexpected moment, one glance, one conversation changed everything I believed about myself, about love, about second chances. Before I dive into the story, let me know from which city you are watching us. I always love to see where our stories are reaching. Drop your city in the comments below. Now, let's begin. I used to think life slowed down after 50. That everything exciting, everything real, had already happened. I believe the best stories belonged to my younger years. It's those restless times when I was still trying to figure out who I was and where I belonged. I thought the chapters ahead were about settling, about routine, about comfort. But I was wrong. What happened that afternoon on what should have been a slow and ordinary Tuesday? Unraveled everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and how we truly connect with another soul. I wasn't expecting anyone that day. My morning had been predictable, almost soothing. I had just finished my daily walk around the lake. A ritual I had kept for nearly 6 years since moving into my modest home outside of Asheville, North Carolina. The air still carried the sharp bite of early September. Leaves were beginning to dry and fall, carrying that earthy scent of change. Somewhere nearby, chimney smoke lingered faintly, mixing with the sweet traces of honeysuckle still clinging. Stubbornly to the wooden fences that lined my yard, mornings were my anchor. They were safe, reliable. I'd return home, put the kettle on, and sip tea while flipping through whatever small pile of mail had landed in my box. That morning's stack seemed ordinary catalogs I didn't need. A water bill, some promotional flyer. But then my eyes froze on one envelope. No return address. Just my name written in a familiar, neat, slanted handwriting that jolted me backward in time, 25 years. I sat at my kitchen table and just stared at it. There are certain objects that feel like they split life in two, the before and the after. That envelope was one of them. My heart beat faster as if it already knew what was waiting inside. But I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I placed it gently on the edge of the table, almost afraid to touch it again. I went about the rest of my morning half present, distracted. With a restless energy humming under the surface, it was nearly 2 in the afternoon when I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway. I was kneeling in the garden, pulling stubborn weeds. Dirt clinging under my fingernails, my knees aching with that dull reminder that I wasn't 20 anymore. When I looked up, I saw a dark blue Buick pulling in, parking a little awkwardly with the front tire brushing against the grass. The car door opened, and then I heard my name, Caroline. His voice hadn't changed. Smooth, calm, steady, like the kind of voice you'd hear on late-night radio. My chest tightened as I squinted against the sunlight. It was him, David. He stepped out and time collapsed. His hair was grayer now, with silver streaks at his temples. The lines around his eyes were deeper, carved by years I hadn't witnessed. But his presence, solid, familiar, almost overwhelming, hit me in a way that made my breath catch. My hands trembled as I brushed the dirt from my jeans and forced myself to stand. "What are you doing here?" My voice shook, caught somewhere between surprise, anger, and disbelief. David looked at the ground briefly, then back at me with that same cautious sincerity I remembered. "I wasn't sure if I should come. I sent you a letter yesterday, but I couldn't wait any longer." So it was him. The envelope on my kitchen table hadn't been a dream. For a moment we stood in silence, cicadas buzzing in the trees, the sun casting long shadows across the yard. The world felt suspended. I finally gestured toward the porch. "Do you want to come in?" He exhaled, almost in relief, and followed me to the house. Inside, the air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of the lavender candles I often burned. I led him to the sunroom in the back of my sanctuary. Its wide windows looked out over the garden and the thick edge of the woods. He lowered himself carefully into the wicker chair across from mine, his hands resting nervously on his knees. We hadn't spoken in 23 years. My heart ached with the weight of that silence. Why now? I asked softly, not in accusation, but in need of an answer. David's eyes searched mine with an intensity that unsettled me. I heard you lost your husband last year, he said gently. I didn't want to intrude before. But when I found out, I don't know. Something told me it was time. Grief cracked open inside me again, sharp and raw. Mark's absence was still a wound that hadn't fully healed. For months, I had kept the pain pressed down, tucked away behind routines and quiet days. Yet now, with David's presence, the ache surfaced instantly. You left, I whispered. You disappeared without a word. And now you think you can just come back. He nodded, his expression solemn. No, I don't expect anything. I don't deserve anything. I've thought about you every single day. And I had to see you, even if it was just once. The silence between us grew thick, but it wasn't empty. It pulsed with all the years, the words left unsaid, the what-ifs I had buried in the corners of my memory. We talked for hours about the lives we'd led apart, about the victories and the failures. He told me about his career, the painful divorce, the daughter he hadn't seen in 5 years. I told him about Mark, the love we shared, and the quiet way he slipped away last winter, like a candle burning out. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was raw, human, fragile. And in that vulnerability, I felt something shift by evening. As the sunlight cast a golden glow across the room, I noticed David's hands trembling slightly when he reached for his glass of water. You okay? I asked. He smiled faintly. Just nervous. I didn't think you'd actually let me in. I couldn't help but smile too, though mine was tinged with sadness. Didn't think I would either. Yet, here we are. That day cracked something open inside me. For so long, I had believed the door was shut, that there were no more surprises left, no more chapters worth turning. But David's presence, tentative, sincere, carrying both regret and hope, made me question everything I thought I knew about endings. Maybe they weren't endings at all. Maybe they were beginnings in disguise. The days that followed blurred together. David didn't vanish after that first visit. He came back the next day and the one after. At first, I thought it was a lapse of judgment, a desperate attempt to reclaim something long gone. But slowly, I began to see it wasn't desperation. It was something deeper. He wasn't trying to erase the years. He was trying to face them. The second time he came, we barely spoke. It wasn't awkward silence. It was a silence filled with observation, curiosity, a cautious studying of each other, like we were both trying to piece together who we had become. My walls were higher now, shaped by grief and time. But his presence tugged at me. By the third visit, something softened. We found a rhythm knot, the reckless, urgent rhythm of our 20s, but a slower, more thoughtful one. We sat on the porch watching the sunset, trading small laughs, letting the silence stretch comfortably between us. Then came the day he brought his daughter, Emily. She was 16, tall and slender, with her father's dark hair but her mother's eyes. I hadn't expected the rush of recognition when I saw her a reminder of all the years that had passed without me in his world. She was shy, polite, uncertain. Hi, it's nice to meet you, she said softly. I returned her smile, though my chest tightened. It's nice to meet you too, Emily. Come in. I'll get some iced tea. The three of us sat at the kitchen table, the space heavy with unspoken questions. Emily picked at her napkin, glancing between us. Finally, she asked the question I had dreaded. Did you know my dad when you were younger? I glanced at David. He gave me a small, apologetic smile. I nodded slowly. Yes, we knew each other well. A long time ago. Her eyes widened slightly, curious, as if trying to piece together a puzzle she didn't know existed. David shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat. I should have explained more before bringing her. I didn't mean to overwhelm you. It's fine, I reassured, though my heart raced. It's just a lot to process. Emily leaned in, still curious. So how did you two meet? The memories rushed back in waves of our 20s, fresh out of college, two dreamers stumbling through life. We met when we were young. We shared something real, but life. It has a way of pulling people in different directions. Emily was quiet, absorbing the words. Then she whispered, "Thank you for sharing. I think I understand him a little better now." Something shifted in that moment, not just between David and me, but between all three of us. A recognition that we were all part of each other's story now, no matter how complicated. That night, after they left, I sat alone on the porch, staring at the stars. My thoughts swirled. How could one afternoon undo decades of certainty? How could it remind me that maybe the endings I believed in weren't endings at all, but doorways I had been too afraid to open? The days that followed were filled with David's quiet presence. Sometimes with Emily, sometimes alone. We didn't rush. We didn't push. We simply shared space, relearning the language of each other's lives. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sleep had been restless, broken into fragments of dreams that felt more like memories than imagination. I dreamt of my younger self standing at a train station, suitcase in hand, watching as David walked away without turning back. When I opened my eyes, the ache lingered, but so did something else, an odd mixture of hope and unease. As if life had quietly turned a corner while I wasn't paying attention. I made my tea slowly, letting the steam curl against my face as I stood by the window. Outside, the world seemed unchanged. The birds flitted across the yard. The sun slid over the tops of the trees. The neighbor's dog barked at nothing. Yet inside, I knew everything was different now. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't just existing. I was waiting by mid-morning. Heard the gravel crunch again. David, I almost laughed at how quickly I recognized the sound of his car now. He stepped out, carrying a small brown paper bag. Looking slightly nervous but determined. "I brought muffins," he said, with a sheepish grin as I opened the door. I arched an eyebrow. "Bribery already?" He chuckled. "Just thought it might make up for the past 23 years. It didn't, of course. Nothing could. But I let him in anyway." And soon we were sitting at the kitchen table with blueberry muffins and steaming mugs of coffee between us. The conversation started light weather news, little updates about the town. But gradually it shifted into something deeper. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd stayed?" he asked suddenly, his voice low. My chest tightened. I had thought about it more times than I could admit. Nights when I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Mornings when I caught the scent of cologne on strangers and was thrust back into memory. "Sometimes," I whispered, "but life doesn't give us rewinds. Only second chances. If we're lucky." He nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on me with a mixture of regret and longing. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I want to know you again. Whoever you are now," his words sat heavy between us, but not unwelcome. It was strange, almost unsettling. It's how natural it felt, like slipping into an old rhythm I hadn't realized I still remembered. Over the next weeks, our connection deepened in quiet, steady ways. He helped me repair the old fence at the back of the property, hammering nails while I held the boards in place. We walked the lake trail together, sometimes talking, sometimes just listening to the crunch of leaves under our feet. On rainy days, we sat inside with books, the sound of thunder filling the silence. Each moment felt fragile, like glass that could shatter with one wrong move. And yet, with every day, I found myself less afraid of that fragility and more drawn to the possibility it offered. One evening, as autumn settled fully over the town, painting the trees in shades of amber and crimson, David invited me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant on Main Street. It was the same place we had gone on one of our first dates decades ago. The decor had changed, but the smell of garlic and fresh bread was the same. As was the quiet hum of conversations around us. Sitting across from him, I felt the years dissolve. For a moment, we weren't older. Weathered by time, we were just two souls meeting again. Surprised by the familiarity of it all. "I don't want to waste what time we have left," David said softly, his fork untouched on the plate. "I know I can't undo the past, but maybe we can write a new chapter." Together, I stared at him, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to run to protect the fragile walls I had built around myself. But another part, the part that had been aching quietly for years, leaned forward and whispered, "Why not?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached for his hand across the table, feeling the warmth of his skin, the tremor in his fingers. In that simple touch, an entire conversation passed between us. The following months became a season of rediscovery. We learned each other's present lives, not just the echoes of our past. He shared his regrets openly, without excuses. I shared my grief, my loneliness, my fear of opening my heart again. We didn't fix everything overnight, but we didn't need to. It was enough to be honest, to be present. One snowy December evening, as we sat by the fire sipping wine, David leaned back and said, "You know, I used to think we only got one great love in a lifetime. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe we can have two. Or maybe we only ever had one, and it's always been you." Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't look away. Because in that moment, I realized something profound. Love doesn't follow the rules we try to give it. It doesn't fade with time or age or distance. Sometimes it waits patiently, hidden beneath years of silence, until two people are brave enough to open the door again. And that was when I finally allowed myself to. Believe not in fairy tales, not in perfect endings, but in the simple, extraordinary truth that it's never too late. Never too late to forgive, never too late to love, never too late to begin again. So when people ask me now, I believe in second chances, I smile, because I know the answer. It's written not in words, but in the quiet moments shared between two souls who found each other again after decades apart. And I hope that whoever listens to this story remembers that too. That no matter how many years have passed, no matter how many mistakes or losses, there is always room for another beginning. Because love is timeless.